Popular hair straightening and smoothing products may contain chemicals known to cause cancer and other health issues.
Our national investigative team found years of research and complaints showing potential issues with products marketed to people with curly and textured hair. Those products still on the market.
It's an issue that disproportionately impacts African-American women. National investigative reporter Caresse Jackman breaks down the chemicals in The Cost of Beauty.
Old ads show for black women, straight hair was a social beauty standard.
Hair so soft, silky, and free.
With permanent cream relaxer.
Which meant getting chemical treatments called relaxers, sometimes called perms in the black community.
There was a standard of beauty, imposed standard of beauty.
What was the experience like whenever you would get your perms?
Oh God, in the beginning it was awful. Scalp would burn.
That burn is an experience many African-American women feel. Our national investigative team requested and obtained Food and Drug Administration documents showing hundreds of complaints. Our findings from coast to coast in the last 2 decades. Hundreds of people have reported concerning and horrific outcomes they believe were tied to chemical hair straighteners. We saw complaints of bald spots, hair loss, blistering, scars, even hospitalizations after applying to the entire head, chemical burns, and cancer diagnosis. The main chemical in question in many of these products is formaldehyde, which the FDA reports has been linked to eye problems, respiratory issues, and even certain types of cancer like ovarian.
Formaldehyde is one of the active ingredients that makes that product work and that makes your hair so shiny and slick and straight and stay that way for months at a time.
The FDA says formaldehyde and 2 related ingredients, formalin and methylene glycol, are some of the chemicals consumers should look for on labels.
When the liquid form of formaldehyde, sometimes marketed as methylene glycol, is in these products and gets heated up, it can release a significant amount of formaldehyde gas.
Our team analyzed around 100 products on popular online beauty supply websites and found more than a dozen listed products contain an ingredient identified by OSHA as one that can release formaldehyde when heated, like with flat ironing or blow drying.
We got those reports related to formaldehyde. There were a lot of them, a lot of women who experienced health issues after getting these treatments or giving these treatments.
Some women have gone to the courts to take action against companies who use formaldehyde in their chemical hair straightening products.
They're so prevalent that they even sell them at gas stations. We want the FDA to act.
But despite a national concern, the FDA has not banned the ingredients, and as of now, has missed its 5th deadline to propose a ban on formaldehyde products. Since 2024, we've reached out to the FDA for comment. A spokesperson told us that the proposed rule continues to remain a priority for the agency and that the FDA may adjust the publication dates of this and other proposed rules when appropriate.
We want these chemical hair relaxers to be taken off the shelves.
As women wait for a change in regulation, many are ditching the relaxers altogether.
So I'm going to be me in my dress and my hair, and it doesn't have to fit into the status quo.
According to the Environmental Working Group, around 80% of the more than 4,000 products marketed to black women that it analyzed contain ingredients rated as moderate to high hazard.